Hi, this is Lucas Ridley with digitalcreatorschool.com. And in this video, I want to talk about the reasons why I quit graduate school. Everyone has their own reasons for going to school or not going to school, but I just recently ran across this document I wrote many years ago when I was in graduate school for the reasons why I quit, and thought maybe it'd be useful for people who are in a similar situation to I was back then. I was getting a degree in a master's in environmental science. At that point, I was working for a university and I had never animated anything. I wasn't doing any really thing related to animation. And eventually I am now a professional animator. And this was kind of a big turning point in my life. And that's why I wanted to kind of share it now that I've found this really old document. So I'm just going to read through some of the things and maybe mention what was going through my mind at that point. And because there was many unknowns, if you're making a big life decision, there's usually a lot of unknowns associated with that and a lot of uncertainty. And so it can be very difficult to make that decision, not knowing if it's the right one to make and how things are going to turn out. And so far, so good for me. I'm glad I quit graduate school. It's not something that I really wanted to do long term, working in environmental science, although I love the outdoors. I love all that kind of stuff. But I just didn't want to do that as an occupation. So the first one I wrote was I was unhappy and I was stressful. I constantly have this weight over me about how much work I have to do for it. So being in graduate school, I mean, I have so much respect for anyone who does decide to go through graduate school because it's a ton of work. At that time, I was also working a full-time job, which I'm sure a lot of people do as well, so they can afford to go to graduate school. And like I was working for the university, so my tuition was paid for. So that's another kind of thing to consider that's unique maybe to my situation is I was actually taking this graduate degree program because it was free, and it was I felt kind of obligated, like, and there's a free master's degree sitting out there and I could just go get it. I just have to put in the work. I don't have to pay for it. So that was one of the big motivations for me to go to graduate school. I felt like I should do it, not that I really wanted to do it. So the next one was I was never motivated, only began doing it because it was free, not because I was motivated or passionate to achieve the degree. And I only got about halfway through it. It was like, we needed, I forget how many hours, but I got about halfway through it. And that's when I decided to quit. And let's see, it's time consuming. I could be learning things that I actually like or improve my regular job skills, which at that point I was making maps for nonprofits and environmental data kind of maps. So what's called geographic information systems, which actually had a little bit of overlap with compositing and, like they would in GIS, there's nearest neighbor sampling and all that kind of stuff where you take pixels and you can try to identify like canopies of trees based on the pixel value. And, there's similar things that happen in compositing and 3D. So it's always been interesting to see where that stuff kind of just a tiny bit of overlap. But it's time consuming going to graduate school. And it wasn't directly improving my day job, which was actually paying the bills at that point, not very well. But I said, I'd much rather like to learn new software and programs. I'm not even sure if this is what I want to be doing for a living. At this point, I was, I think I was maybe like 22 or 23. So this is more than 10 years ago. And I was just out of college. I had an undergraduate degree in forestry. And so if I continue GIS after a few years of experience, this master's would mean less. So basically one job post equated master's to 6 years experience, meaning I found a job description that, I could maybe get paid more to do. And it basically said you need a master's or 6 years of experience. So I figured I could either just stay in the job I was doing for another few years, and that would be the equivalent of having a master's degree, at least in this one job posting. So experience equates to a master's to some degree. So it kind of depends on a case-by-case basis, but in this instance, I have some specific examples. I remember looking at job descriptions and thinking, it's going to be the same difference whether I get this master's or not. It won't really matter in the type of jobs that are available to me. So that was another reason, what's the point at that point? I definitely thought the subject material was interesting, but it was really demanding. Disappoint. I said something like, got this far because it was relatively easy. I had like a 3.64 GPA, but now I'm staying in the program from fear of disappointing others or feeling like a quitter, not because I actively want to stay in the program. So it was more of a not wanting to disappoint other people and less of a I really want to do this thing, which also isn't that great of a reason to stay in and do anything. You have to, basically what I'm getting at here is you have to learn when to cut your losses and just quit something. It's good to quit things. You need to quit things to say yes to other things they actually want to do, which is what ended up happening to me and how I got into animation. So let's see, fear. Another factor helped me get this far is fear, just because I'm being afraid of the future and thinking masters will help me in the future, not because I really want it. Again, kind of out of disappointment, out of fear, I was getting a master's degree. I felt guilt. I've always felt guilty or stressed when trying to relax, not knowing how much work I had to do. So I could never totally relax because I always had that hanging over me. And then in my specific program, I didn't feel like I had a ton of guidance. I think maybe I can't remember what was happening. Maybe there were transitions in professors or mentors. And I think there was something about it took 6 months and I still didn't have a budget for my thesis idea. And then there was this one big paper I had to write on this chemical. And it was I just physically couldn't. I can remember just being physically like, I cannot do this. So at the end of the day, I felt like I was only doing it because I should do it, not really because I wanted to do it. And it wasn't an easy decision because I'd already gotten halfway through it. Like I was already really far along and I'd already invested a lot of my time into it, taking, graduate level statistics classes and spending a lot of time. I mean, this is hours and hours and hours of my time every week. And then I was just going to stop and not have anything to show for it. So there's something to be said for cutting your losses and moving on. And it can be a difficult thing to do because you'll have an emotional attachment to that and you'll feel like you're losing something and not gaining something, when in reality, you could be opening the door somewhere else for a really big opportunity, which for me was getting into the animation industry and working in animation. So that's what I ended up doing. I think it was maybe like 6 months to a year after I wrote this, I ended up going to school for about 1 year to learn animation. And then soon after that, I was working full-time at an animation studio. So long story short, I'm glad that I quit this master's program, but I wanted to share this personal story just because I know I have a lot of students who are in similar positions. Maybe your parents want you to get a master's degree or a graduate degree in some way because it's job security, but in the reality of the future of work, it depends on the industry, but I just don't really see it being the determining factor in success in a lot of ways. It could definitely open a ton of doors and be the right thing for a lot of people, but for me, it wasn't right, and I was able to totally switch careers, which if you're interested in, I actually teach a class called How to Launch Your Creative Career, and you can see that on digitalcreatorschool.com, and I go into a little more detail and give you some actionable things and go through my mindset and how I was able to switch careers after quitting master's program, after having, an undergrad degree in something totally different than animation, and how I switched careers. So if you're interested in that and you want more information about this, definitely become a member at digitalcreatorschool.com, and you're going to have access to that class and every class that I teach. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week and in the other classes and in the courses on digitalcreatorschool.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.